I'm Rob Licuria, Senior Editor at Gold Derby, here with sound maestros Ethan van der Ryn and Erik Aadahl. Guys, the work that you've done on this reboot of Transformers called Rise of the Beast is so exciting to me, because director Stephen Capel has really tried to make it more of an emotional, kind of heartfelt journey about what are essentially robots, but kind of treated more like actors. And I'm really curious to know whether that informed your work on the film. Ethan, how about you first?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so much of what we do on these big visual effects movies is about sort of helping to find the soul of these characters, that are essentially, animated. And of course, the main thing is the actors who bring the voice, but then there's so much that we, as sound designers, bring to the character, in terms of movement, in terms of all the sort of things that go around the voice. And in the case of this movie, there's a whole new species of robots in the Maximals who are all animal based. So in that case, it gives us a lot more leeway to run with, all these different animal sounds to sort of try and create a voice that's part robotic and part animal, and sort of bring that to the movie, to really, help give these things a soul. And that's so much fun for us, to sort of go through that process. And it is a process in terms of figuring out what works and what really sticks and clicks in a way. So yeah, this movie really provided us some new opportunities in terms of finding the souls of these characters.
Yeah, and I would add to that, I think it was our very first meeting with Steven, just talking about, broad scope of what we're trying to do with this movie. And the first thing he said was the emotion, the heart of the movie is the most important thing to him. So in a sense, everything that we're doing, like with what Ethan's talking about, bringing sort of a soul to the characters, bringing having them all have a sonic signature, all of that has to be sort of character based and feed into the heart of the movie. And I think Steven did such an incredible job of melding that emotion with this kind of high concept action science fiction, into something that's kind of special. And Ethan and I are one of just a handful of people who've worked on all of the Transformers movies. And so the biggest challenge was, how do we make it fresh? And that was the first direction Steven gave us. It's like, okay, we know what Optimus Prime sounds like, we know what Bumblebee sounds like. How do we take it the next step and play off of those tropes in kind of a new and fresh way? And of course, we have all these new characters also, from Scourge, played by Peter Dinklage, to Unicron, whose voice Coleman Domingo did this incredible performance of it. He was literally eating the microphone on the ADR stage to get that that huge proximity. So we had so much talent to kind of work with to try to make something really fun.
Yeah, the cast on this film is unreal. For anyone who hasn't seen it yet, that's probably, I think, to me, as a 90s Beast Wars fan when I was much younger, it was just so exciting to know the Maximals were coming back. And then to have this film that, to me, had the same kind of heart and soul that Bumblebee had, but with this 90s nostalgia. There's so much that is going for this film. But what really impresses me is that you guys have said in the past to us, actually, for Quiet Place Part 2, that there's a lot of pressure that comes with working on a sequel. So what's that pressure like for a project like this, particularly when you're told we want to go in a little bit of a different direction, we want it to be more heart and soul, we want you to take it to the next level. Like if that's me, I would be slightly losing sleep over that. So how does that feel to you guys?
Well, actually, I feel like we love that. Because we kind of do that for ourselves anyways. Like we never want to be repeating ourselves, you know. With every project we come to, it's like we want it to feel fresh, even if it is part of a franchise and a sequel. We're always looking for like a new angle and how do we up our game. And then so to hook up with a director who, you know, gives us that direction from the outset. You know, it's a little bit, it definitely is pressure, but it's pressure we're always putting on ourselves anyways. So it kind of is synchronous in that way. And you know, there was a lot of opportunity in this movie to take it in some different directions, and to explore some new areas. So it kind of worked out really well.
Yeah. I always think that you could have, to be fair, phoned this in and just kind of repeated what you've already done in the past. I mean, you were nominated for an Oscar for Dark Side of the Moon, I think it was. And like, so you've already proven that you're at the top of your game when it comes to this franchise. But you didn't. You decided to go to give us even more. So Erik, I'm curious then, given that you talked about the Maximals, they are they're just so, I love the way that they look on the screen. I love Gary Brosnich and his team's work on bringing them to life. What was probably the most challenging part about reinventing the wheel, so to speak, for making sounds that are more organic than what we're accustomed to hearing?
Yeah, no, the word organic is absolutely the approach with the Maximals. We wanted to really distinguish them from the Autobots and the Decepticons, and go in a different direction towards something that was more natural. So instead of using servos and metal, we're making their movements out of actual animal sounds and organic sounds like rock and sinew. Their vocals were kind of the first thing we really tackled. And David Whitehead, who's working out of New Zealand, took a first stab at creating the snorts of Rhinox, the roars of Primal, the shrieks of Air Razor, the purrs of Cheetor, and that was a really fun kind of first step to take that approach, the organic approach, where we're using kind of animal-based recordings that we've done, but then sort of twisting them into the Transformers universe. You know, Air Razor is one of my favorite characters. We did this extensive Birds of Prey record with owls and vultures, and taking those shrieks and manipulating them. And of course, Air Razor is voiced by Michelle Yeoh, and so who had just come off of winning an Oscar for Everything Everywhere All at Once. And so we wanted to really make her character really unique and special, but still feel grounded as well, as much as you can in a movie like this. So
Wow.
yeah, the fun part is just experimenting and just trying to come up with, you know, our litmus for ourselves is, can we give ourselves goosebumps? Can we surprise ourselves? And it's only then that we feel like we can evoke the same reaction from an audience. You know, we're kind of our own toughest critics, and we're pretty brutal about like, no, select all, delete, start over, you know. But in a way that's super freeing, because it's like really in our guts that we know if something is going in the right direction or not. It's not a intellectual thing.
I just find it so incredible for people like yourselves who've been working in this industry for a while. How is it possible in your profession, and I ask this all the time to sound editors, sound mixers, but especially sound editors, with the thousands of projects that have come before in our pop culture, that you're able to find and create something new and innovative on each project. You're able to do it somehow. Doesn't that weigh on you at least a bit, Erik and Ethan? Perhaps you first, Ethan. Like, it just seems like, how is that even possible that you're always finding something new?
Well, I think part of it might be that, maybe I have a very bad memory, and I sort of I embrace that, in the sense that when I come to, when I start on a new project, in some ways I want to start with a blank slate and like wipe my memory banks of everything that's influenced me on projects in the past, and try and to really come to something fresh, in my own mind, and not with a lot of sort of pre-assumptions necessarily, but to try and, sit down fresh and start to take in the work and feel how I react to it, and start working from that place, of sort of a gut level emotional response to the story, and see where that takes me in terms of what we want to do sonically. So I think it's, it's really about figuring out a way to just get that freshness. So you're not influenced, by other movies that you've watched or other movies that you've worked on, but to try and come to each project and just tackle it as its own thing.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And also embrace accidents. Like, there's often these sort of serendipitous kind of mistakes that turn out to be epiphanies. And we've had a lot of them working on all of these movies. But to me, one of those epiphanies was, we're trying to come up with sounds for Mirage, Pete Davidson's character. And Mirage is kind of this, smart alecky, rebellious, but super cool kind of character. And we're trying to come up with like his sort of signature. And it was just through like this happy accident of putting the wrong plugin on the right sound, and turned out to be the right plugin. And it just had this sort of like new, fresh, super sci-fi kind of quality. And it was an accident, but those are kind of some of my favorite things, where just when something different just appears and totally works. And then, and you just do it one piece at a time. That same character, so his robot takes the form of a Porsche, the 911 Carrera 3.8, the 964 model. And there's only a couple dozen of those that were ever made. And on set, Porsche didn't actually allow, they're like 3 million a pop minimum. So they didn't actually allow those in Peru for those big chase scenes. They'd take the shell and put it on a different block. But Porsche gave us one of those actual original 964s that we took out to an airstrip in California City, and just spent an entire day recording Mirage. And I think we broke a record for the longest high-speed reverse in history for the New York chase, where he spins around and backs up along the bridge. And of course, when you're in those situations, you get these sort of things that you'd never expect to get with a stunt driver and an engine, that are these kind of serendipitous, wonderful accents that go into the movie, and audiences might think they're totally intentional, but so many of them are happy accidents that just bring a freshness to a scene.
I'm sorry, I've got to be honest. I just find all that so incredibly cool. As a layperson who wouldn't know the faintest idea about how to come up with what you guys do, I just find that, like, it sounds like a lot of fun. It's probably a shit ton of work, but it sounds like a lot of fun as well. And I'm curious that do you get asked a lot? Oh, what's the strangest sound? When you tasered a grape or things like that. What's the strangest thing that you've done? And so then I might as well ask that question because people want to know, what is the strangest sound you deployed for this film?
Well, so we kind of updated some of the original tropes that we established in the previous films, and one of those was so Bumblebee communicates through his radio. He's lost the ability to speak, but he can pick out things from radio or TV and use those to communicate. And the sounds leading in and out of them are kind of these synthetic squiggly sounds, and that was 100% an accident. That was like getting home from work late one night, parked in the driveway. I step out of the car, it's dark, and I step on something and it goes, and it was the garden hose that had some liquid in it and created this like almost like a talking radio tuning kind of sound. And so I unscrewed the garden hose, brought it up inside, put it in the bathtub, and just recorded for an hour, like all of those little sounds. And those became Bumblebee's tuning sounds. And you'd never think, oh, a garden hose is what's going to make a Bumblebee sound. But that's what's kind of fun, I think, about sound design and what we do. It's so malleable that you can take something that you'd never visually connect to that thing and make it work. And the less that a sound has to do with what you're seeing on screen, the more I love it, you know?
Yeah. And just to riff on that idea, I mean, these movies are such a great playground for that idea of taking sort of organic sounds and then applying them to these inorganic creatures, you know, these robots. And there's something really beautiful about, you know, that alignment of the organic with the synthetic, using the organic to portray the synthetic. And then occasionally, you know, doing the reverse and using the sort of totally synthetic sounds as well, and weaving them together. And it's there's something really beautiful about working in that way that I love about, you know, this movie in particular.
What, you know, you just reminded me of something that I'd totally forgotten about until just now. Speaking of exactly that, Steven was having a baby during this movie, and the baby was actually born during our final mix. And he had an idea to take the ultrasound recordings of his baby's heartbeat, and we used that for the energon sounds in the movie. The energon in Peru that brings Bumblebee back to life. So that's actually his baby's heartbeat.
That is amazing. And so, I mean, just for his family, they can look back and listen back on that film forever. Oh, that's so cool, man. That is
little
too
story
cool.
capable in the movie forever.
Yes, I love that. You guys have been at the Oscars a few times, and I asked this because this is what Gold Derby's obsessed about. You shared nominations for A Quiet Place, by the way. The sound on that movie blew my mind. Argo, Transformers, Dark Side of the Moon, that we talked about earlier. Ethan, you're also nominated for Transformers, the OG, and you won for Two Towers and King Kong. I'm curious what you both think about being at the Oscars. What's your like highlight when you think back as a nominee, as a winner? It's a pretty special thing for technicians and artisans like yourselves to be recognized in that way, isn't it?
Oh, it's very special. Yeah, I mean, it's just a wonderful thing to really feel like you know, you're part of this group of people, like working on films. It's such an incredible, and I'm sure most people say this, but it really is such a big team effort, you know, where it takes so, you know, an army of people all sort of working so closely together to bring this story to life. And the Oscars is like such a great representation of, you know, bringing that idea to the forefront of how it's like all these different people like working on their little bit that all sort of plugged together to bring it to life. And so, yeah, it's a really beautiful thing. And the last time we went, I was able to bring my two sons, and that was super special for me because you know, it's just to be able to share that with them. Yeah, it was real special.
Yeah, I mean, the coolest thing for me was so so my mom, before she passed away, came to the Oscars nominee luncheon with me as my date. And it was kind of funny because, you know, for most of my life, you know, my mom always thought I would go into medicine. And that's actually what I studied pre-med along during film school. And she always asked me like, okay, well, the sound design thing is pretty cool, but you're still leaving the doctor thing open, right? It's like, well, I don't know, Mom. And it was funny, like at the nominees luncheon, she's like, oh, this is pretty cool. And it
Yeah.
was kind of fun to experience it through my mom's eyes. And I'm really happy that before she passed away, we had that experience together.
It's so beautiful that you can both connect memories of your parents or your kids with something like the Oscars, which is the pinnacle, I guess, in this industry. On that note, guys, thank you for your time and your insights today. I hope I see you on the red carpet in the next few months, but we'll keep our fingers crossed.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.